No, I wouldn't dare give my opinion to his face. Maybe stick to the boxing. Who knows? Although the sports news, as ever, on the BBC Sport website, I can see the latest scores in Serie A as well. And Napoli leading 1-0 at Juventus, and that match is into the second half. A game's underway at the moment in Italy and in Spain. Keep up with that on the BBC Sport website if you can. But that is all from me and the team for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
This is BBC News. I'm Christian Fraser. A year on from the attack on the US Capitol, we have an hour of special programming on the event that shocked the world. In a decidedly sharp tone, Joe Biden lays the blame for the January 6 riots squarely at the door of Donald Trump.
The former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election.
Mr. Trump has hit back, repeating his false claims about the election and accusing Joe Biden of destroying the nation. On the House floor, the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, holds a moment of silence for those who died. More than 700 people have been arrested in connection with that day so far. This hour will speak to the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. Hello, good evening. It is January 6th and a year to the day that I sat here in this studio reporting on the mayhem unfolding on the steps of the US Capitol. Marking that anniversary today, President Biden has made it clear who he thinks was responsible and why. Donald Trump, the first president in US history to refuse to accept the results of an election and to submit to a peaceful transfer of power. Some describe those events as a coup or an insurrection. But by the time they took place, the attempt had already failed. At that moment, on that day, the Vice President was in the Senate chamber overseeing the certification of the election result, which Mr. Trump and his supporters had spent weeks trying to subvert. Dustin Stockton and Jennifer Lawrence were subpoenaed and have since given evidence to the January 6th committee. Mr. Stockton, said the panel, was concerned that the rally at the Ellipse, which he helped organise, would lead to a march to the Capitol that would mean possible danger, which he said felt unsafe. And these concerns were escalated to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Dustin and Jennifer are with us. Welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us. Dustin, I want to come first to the subpoena and the evidence that you've supplied to the committee, because I think it's really important to understand right from the outset of our programme tonight whether this attack on the Capitol was spontaneous or whether you think it was pre-planned. Dustin Stockton and Jennifer Lawrence, I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
A violent clash with a mob of angry rioters was not the battle the Capitol Police were prepared for that day, or indeed equipped to win. Many of the officers on duty had never before made an arrest, much less engaged in hand-to-hand combat. The intelligence failures are now well documented. 3 days before the attack, an internal intelligence report described what would occur with extraordinary accuracy. Stop the Steel's propensity, it said, to attract white supremacists, militia members and others who actively promote violence may lead to a significantly dangerous situation for law enforcement and the general public alike. So how do those officers deal with the anniversary today, and how do they feel about the failures in intelligence? Officer Harry Dunn has been speaking to my colleague Laura Trevelyan. Let's bring in the Attorney General for the District of Columbia, Cara Seen. Attorney General, it's lovely to have you on the programme. The officers who were there that day, who went through that trauma, they need answers. How many answers do you think you've provided? Attorney General, it's very good to talk to you again. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Christian.
A year on, the House Select Committee is still trying to figure out what went wrong and who was ultimately responsible. There are a lot of things that should have occurred that didn't, but was that by design? The committee is uncovering new evidence, including a timeline of what President Trump did or did not do that day, including a body of evidence they say shows he willfully chose not to stop the violence despite pleas from his own children. Donald Trump Jr., who sent texts in real time, wrote he's got to condemn this ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough. There were texts from Fox News anchors who urged White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to get the president to call off the rioters. Laura Ingraham messaged, "This is hurting all of us. He's destroying his legacy." Ryan Kilmeade said, "Please get him on TV, destroying everything you've accomplished." While Sean Hannity texted, "Can he make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol." In an interview aired today, the former communications director and press secretary for the Trump administration, Stephanie Grisham, talked about what she saw that day in the White House. She said that she didn't know who specifically spoke to Donald Trump, but she did know what he was doing. Let's bring in Olivia Troy, former Homeland Security Advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. You were formerly in the Trump White House, so you were a counter-terrorism advisor to Vice President Pence, Olivia. So I want to understand, and we're going to put up a map of the geography of the White House for our viewers and the West Wing. Now, the president was supposedly watching television in the dining room next to the Oval Office. Where is that in relation to his desk? And more importantly, I suppose, who would have access to that room? Olivia Troy, who was serving as a national security advisor in the White House, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. We're going to focus on the work of the committee in the next half hour. We'll also bring in Ron Christie and Amanda Renteria to talk about the impact of January 6th. What does it mean to the body politic in America? What does it mean for American democracy? Do stay with us for that. Welcome back. The House Congressional Committee investigating the events of January 6th is made up of 7 Democrats and only 2 Republicans. It's not, in the fullest sense, a bipartisan committee. And they have limited time available. If the Republicans were to take back the House in November's midterm elections, then it's almost certain they would shut it down as soon as they have power. So the committee will publish its report sometime in the autumn. The question is, will it bring further charges? So far, they have interviewed 300 witnesses, issued more than 50 subpoenas, and trawled through 35,000 documents, including bank and phone records. Here's the senior Republican on that committee, Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Pleased to welcome the Democratic Congresswoman from Pennsylvania, Madeleine Dean. Congresswoman, lovely to have you on the programme. We're going to talk about the committee, but first of all, I want to focus on you, because I've seen a picture today from a year ago of you being led to a holding room in this makeshift gas mask. And I think sometimes we overlook what a traumatic event this was for many of the lawmakers who were trapped in the gallery. So what does it bring back to you a year on? Congresswoman, I know you've just come from the House floor where you were speaking. We're always grateful for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
The storming of the Capitol stunned America as it stunned those of us watching around the world. The last time government buildings were breached in Washington was 1814, and then the invaders were British soldiers. The congressman we heard from on the night, Lou Correa, was clear in his mind what had just unfolded. Let's bring in some familiar faces. I'm joined from Washington by Ron Christie, former advisor to President George W. Bush, and from Oakland, California, the Democratic strategist Amanda Renteria. Thank you both for being with us. Ron, let me start with you. Why do you think senior Republican figures did not take the opportunity when it was presented a year ago to step away from the former president? Ron Christie, Amanda Renteria, good to see you.
Good to see you.
We know by now, as Ron's just said, there will never be a widely agreed history of what took place on January 6th. There are two alternate narratives pushed by partisan media that cannot, at least in the short term, ever be reconciled. Today, on the anniversary, the president's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, hosted the Republican congressman and Trump supporter, Matt Gaetz, who views it this way. With me is Brian Lanza, former communications director for Donald Trump's transition team. Brian, it's nice to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you.
We have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is that right now Donald Trump probably is the favourite to run for the Republicans in 2024. Do you still think that's a reality? Brian, it's good to see you. Always good to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Let's quickly head over to Capitol Hill because Gary O'Donoghue is there for us. He'll be here throughout the night, continuing the BBC's coverage. And I understand, Gary, that there's going to be a vigil in about half an hour's time that the president might attend. Gary O'Donoghue in Washington, thank you very much for that. Let me quickly bring you some live pictures from Washington. These are the supporters of Joe Biden and the Democrats gathering in Washington calling for the Senate and Mr. Biden to enact the Freedom to Vote Act, a voting rights bill, and the Protecting Our Democracy Act, which includes reforming oversight of the executive branch. We were just talking with Ron and Amanda about the threat to voting rights. It's quite a reasonably sized crowd that is out there on the Mall. As Gary said, we don't know whether President Biden is going to show up to this. But there you see Congressman Ruskin, who was one of the senior impeachment managers at the second impeachment of Donald Trump, who has just taken to the stage. That's it from us. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Plenty more coverage of the anniversary of the 6th of January on BBC News and plenty more on BBC Online. Goodbye.
I'm Laura Trevelyan in Washington, and this is BBC World News America. It's 1 year since the US Capitol was attacked by supporters of then-President Donald Trump, who were trying to prevent the election victory of Joe Biden from being certified. Today, speaking from inside the Capitol, President Biden accused Mr. Trump and his allies of holding a dagger at the throat of American democracy.
The former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election.
We'll look at how the events of January the 6th affected the way America is viewed around the world. We'll hear from our correspondents across the globe. Plus, in Kazakhstan, after days of deadly anti-government protests, Russian forces are now arriving in the country. Our correspondent is on the scene in Almaty.
The clashes are taking place just a few hundred meters away from where I'm standing now. You can hear the sound of shooting and explosions.
Welcome to World News America on PBS and around the globe. It's been exactly 1 year since supporters of then-President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol building here in Washington, trying to stop lawmakers from certifying Joe Biden's election victory. Today, President Biden accused his predecessor of promoting a web of lies about the 2020 election because he couldn't stand losing. Top Republicans did not attend today's official events at the Capitol, accusing Democrats of using the anniversary to further divide the country. Our North America correspondent, Lee McBool, starts our coverage. It wasn't just Americans glued to their screens as the US Capitol was attacked. The rest of the world was watching too. We've been hearing from our correspondents around the globe about how January the 6th has affected the world's view of American democracy. And for more on how the attack on the Capitol affected America's standing, we're joined by the BBC's chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette. And Lise, President Biden's national security advisor recently admitted that the attack on the Capitol worried America's allies while it emboldened America's adversaries. Is that accurate, do you think? Lise Doucette, thank you. So that's the global view of what happened at the Capitol a year ago. For more on the impact here in the US, we're joined now by Seth Moulton, a Democratic congressman from the state of Massachusetts. Welcome back to the programme. So you're a former US Marine who served in Iraq. How surprised and shocked were you a year ago to find yourself sheltering in place in the US Capitol? Congressman Seth Moulton, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, as Congressman Moulton was paying tribute to there, it was the Capitol Hill police who were attacked by the rioters a year ago as they defended lawmakers. And it's those officers who are still living with the trauma of what happened. I've been speaking to Officer Harry Dunn about what he encountered that day and how he's making sense of what happened. Capitol Hill police officer Harry Dunn there speaking to me. In some other news now, thousands of people have again taken to the streets of the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, to protest against military rule. The security services have fired tear gas at demonstrators near the presidential palace. It's the first organised demonstration since the resignation of the Prime Minister on Sunday. Some bridges between Khartoum and nearby cities were closed ahead of the rally, and internet and mobile phone services were disrupted. We turn now to Kazakhstan, where violent clashes have been continuing as security forces try to crush anti-government protests. Forces from neighbouring Russia arrived after the Kazakh president appealed for help. There's now a blackout of the internet and the mobile phone network. The protests began over the price of fuel. Now they're encompassing other grievances too. Our correspondent, Abdujalal Abdurasulov, sent this report. We return now to our top story tonight, the one-year anniversary of the attack on the US Capitol. Joining us for more analysis of that day is Ron Christie, a Republican strategist and former advisor to President George W. Bush. Ron, welcome back to the programme. So a year ago, I remember you were shocked and appalled by what unfolded at the US Capitol. What's the legacy of that day for Republicans? Ron Christie, thank you so much as ever for being with us tonight with that analysis. Well, 1 year after the storming of the Capitol, President Biden has accused his predecessor, Donald Trump, of spreading a web of lies about the 2020 election. Mr. Trump has responded angrily, accusing Mr. Biden of trying to divide the country even further. This was the scene here in Washington, D.C. this morning as the sun rose over the dome of the U.S. Capitol. Today, that Capitol building was home to speeches, vigils, and moments of silence for those who were killed and those who were injured in last year's attack. America's political divisions were underlined today. Republican congressional leaders did not attend the formal events at the US Capitol. Tributes have been paid to those police officers who defended lawmakers on January the 6th, ensuring that eventually they were able to return to the US Capitol and complete that job of certifying the US presidential election result. I'm Laura Trevelyan. Thank you so much for watching this special edition of BBC World News America.
Hello there. We've got a lot of cloud and scattered showers